Spontaneous thought is whenever you are at rest or when your mind wander, what kind of thinking you have or what kind of emotions you are having spontaneously. If we can examine those spontaneous thought, I think we can get the better idea about the person's self-identity and what constitutes this self. When something is becoming chronic, whether it's pain or not, if something is really repeatedly happening in our lives, I think that will become a part of ourselves.
It's kind of interesting to think like how self-identity is inherently tied to our environments. So our brains are modeling our environments, right?
The anatomy of any system has to contain with it a model of the environment in which that system is immersed.
The complex environments that we live in, including like the socioeconomic structures that we live in, are not like physical spaces, but they're definitely things that we butt up against in our lives. If you are sick and you need help, that's really important to you. And in our world, maybe you can't get that help if you don't have insurance, right? So you kind of have to learn where these walls are, even though they're not really there. And it would be kind of interesting to think like if these spontaneous thoughts are like testing those boundaries somehow and then proving to you maybe in that your pain is still really relevant to the context that you're in and keeping it up for that reason. If I can share an anecdote, I grew up in New York. 9/11 happened when I was young. My dad was a firefighter. Like I had a lot of anxiety with that. I think just growing up in New York too, you have anxiety, it's like everyone here has like a certain degree of neuroticism, right? When I moved to Colorado for grad school, I had this deep realization that like what I thought was my personality, like that neuroticism was me, was actually not there anymore.
As I think more about this internal model and the self, the environment becomes so important. I mean, environment defines everything. If we need to survive, we need to become a really good model of the world and environment. It really applies to the evolution. All creatures, they need to find a niche through the natural selection. They become a really perfect model of that environment, that niche. That is really consistent with your story. Our brain becomes a model of that environment.
Yeah.
In New York, maybe being anxious is becoming good model of the
Yeah.
environment, maybe. And being in Colorado, like
Yeah.
not being anxious is a better model, maybe.
So just by looking at the brain, I can tell you the sort of universe that you inhabit under the free energy principle, under the assumption that your brain has become a model of the environment that it inhabits.
It sucks because we don't have so much control of our environment, but a lot of the environment that I think that does impact us often negatively is human constructed, but it's so much bigger than us. Not one person can change it. One study we were vibing on
Yeah.
is this really large study of chronic pain rates in workers in South Korea. They compare workers that are unionized, like have a union, and ones that don't. And then even if workers in both of those categories experience the same level of perceived discrimination at their workplace, the ones that have a union are less likely to develop chronic pain. When we were at CU Boulder, right, we unionized while we were there. We started off with no union and it grew slowly, and it didn't even become like a formal union until after I graduated. I thought like my graduate student experience changed through my experience of building that union because I felt like the act of advocating for ourselves and like working together with other people and like also just having your struggle validated with other people changed my conception of self-efficacy, which benefited me. And I wonder if that is part of what they're picking up when they see differences in like the rates of chronic pain between those two groups. If you believe you have resources to advocate for yourself when you don't have resources from the socioeconomic system, does that change something in your brain potentially in this frontal network, right? This coping
Yeah.
system network that says, well, maybe this pain signal doesn't have to be super relevant right now because you are going to be able to get to safety.
So that could be like extended mind. The union becomes your frontoparietal network, basically. Like, so
Cool.
if you think about the direction of the prediction in our model, the
Mhm.
higher synchrony between somatomotor and frontoparietal network predicts more pain, not lower pain. So if there is a more pain, people have to recruit the frontoparietal more. I mean, we cannot really know what's first and what's cause and what's effect, but But the correlative relationship says higher activity in synchronized with the somatomotor network is predictive of more pain. That means if we have other system that becomes our frontoparietal network, they are doing the role of frontoparietal network, and then our frontoparietal network can focus on other things like the what we really value, for example, the work and then love and other things. So that totally makes sense to me that the having the union or having support network as my frontoparietal network, that might be helpful for pain regulation.
A unionized job, generally speaking, it's better pay, better benefits. But I think Marianne makes a very good point in that you do have recourse. In a non-unionized environment, generally speaking, if you have a problem, you kind of just have to suck it up.
I majored in medicine. When I was in the school, I felt some limitation in the modern medicine, specifically related to some chronic kind of disorders, including chronic pain. We really need to incorporate different types of components in when we want to find the new imaging-based biomarker of pain, including not just specifically control types of stimuli or something, but we have to really incorporate biopsychosocial components into the modeling.
Yeah, I think the economic resources at one's disposal and the ability to access power and how much power you have over your own life, including your life at work, I think that's going to have a massive impact on the amount of pain you feel.